Thank you for taking the time to download this webinar and for your interest in online testing. I'm Adam Justice, a product marketing manager here at Adobe. My particular focus is with Adobe's Test and Target product. Our webinar today is entitled Why Testing is the Next Frontier in Site Optimization. And we have a couple of excellent guests that are joining me to help provide some insight and illumination on the topic. We have Mr. Joe Stanhope, Senior Analyst from Forrester Research, and Ms. Julie Hall, Product Manager from OpenTable.com, who will both be sharing some content with us in just a moment. Our objectives for today's webcast are to allow Joe to review the key analysis and results from Forrester's online testing vendor landscape report that they recently compiled that will give and what he has learned by speaking with the participants in that landscape report, as well as the recent wave report on the topic of online testing, is going to provide you, the listener or the follower of this webcast, some excellent insight into what you need to be considering when selecting a vendor for online testing, as well as what are the things that you should be thinking about generally when thinking about putting an online testing program in place for your organization. And so that obviously will address our second bullet here of exploring the current testing challenges, benefits, and opportunities, as well as examining best practices and strategies to overcome those obstacles that I mentioned before. And then we'll have Julie review how OpenTable.com has increased revenues by leveraging Adobe Test and Target. It'll be great to get her perspective as someone who has already gone through the process of selecting a vendor and has faced the challenges and found some success. I'd also like to inform you that there are additional resources and other webinars on other topics available to you at the URL that is highlighted here, omniture.com/webinars, and also have some additional contact information there for you if you are interested. As I mentioned, the topic for our webcast today is online testing. But at Adobe, we like to reiterate that testing is only a portion of what we like to refer to as the online marketing suite, as it's represented on this slide here. Omniture was founded on the basis of being able to provide accurate web analytics, but the vision never stopped there. The vision was always providing you the data, the opportunity to decipher that data, and then do something with the data. And as it's represented here, you can see that the baseline is that open business analytics platform where you're collecting data from multiple sources, whether it's from activity on the internet, from external sources or sources within your enterprise, and then once you have that platform of data, being able to leverage it via technology and best practices and relevant services that allow you to most effectively bring visitors to your website or other online properties, and then convert them by presenting them a optimized online experience, an experience that you are optimizing and evolving over time based on the data that you're seeing that's being provided via those online analytics, as well as channel analytics, because we all know that our online activities do not exist in a vacuum. So by channel analytics, we're also referring to what's happening offline that's still relevant to those visitors that you're seeing online. What happened in the call center? What's happening at point of sale? Do you have access to that data? Can you help rationalize it and bring it in and help it add richness and depth to the online experience? Well, the Adobe Online Marketing Suite can certainly help you do that. And also you see at the top we're referring to the CMO dashboard. That's the opportunity to make sense, to distill this information and present it in a sensible format for the CMO all the way down to any user in your organization that's going to derive value from that. So we'd like to remind folks about the Adobe Online Marketing Suite, and that even though today we're talking about testing, that this is only part of the broader value that we like to bring to your organization, that we continually are focused on improving. So again, as I mentioned earlier, today's topic of testing would reside within this conversion space. You can see a host of products headlined there by Adobe Test and Target. These are the products that are focused on helping you help your customers accomplish something that that maps to their intent once they've arrived on your website. So what can you do to ensure that they're having the most relevant and efficient experience there? And what can you do once you've discovered that perhaps you've got some sort of breakage in the experience? If you look at your Fallout report and you know that you've got a page that's underperforming, what can you do? These are the products that allow you to jump right into that space, present different experiences, identify what's going to function or what's going to help the customers more effectively accomplish what they're looking to do, and move on. So with that is the Adobe Online Marketing Suite. We're going to focus on testing today, and we look forward to the insight of our distinguished guests, as I mentioned. We'll be starting with Joe Stanhope from Forrester. Joe, we're thrilled that you've joined us today, and we really look forward to your perspective.
Thanks, Adam. It's great to be here.
We also have Julie Hall with us on the webinar, who's going to present, I think, an incredibly relevant and an interesting overview of the testing efforts at OpenTable.com, and we always appreciate having someone who's actually in the trenches and has their hands dirty executing a testing or any type of online marketing effort. So, Julie, welcome.
Thank you. Great to be here.
With that sort of concludes the preamble, and we'd like to give Joe the controls and the opportunity to go ahead and to dive into his content.
Great. Thanks, Adam. Appreciate it. As Adam mentioned, my name is Joe Stanhope. I'm a senior analyst at Forrester Research. I serve the customer intelligence role at Forrester, and our goal on my team is to work with clients to collect, measure, and transform customer information into a strategic asset. And within the CI practice, I focus specifically on web measurement, which involves primarily web analytics and the other orbiting technologies around the web analytics world, particularly online testing and targeting. So thanks to Adobe and Adam and the team for inviting me to present this morning. The theme for my presentation today is that interest in online testing is intensifying as firms seek to optimize website experiences in a high-stakes and uncertain atmosphere. From my perspective, interest in online testing has been expanding exponentially, and it's easy to see why when you think about it. The website is mission-critical for so many organizations today, and the stakes are just too high to risk guessing what content or promotions are going to resonate with your customers. Online testing provides crucial functionality to quantitatively improve the customer experience, and most of all, it can drive the bottom line. If it's on the website and measurable, it can be improved and optimized, and we find that even small tests of things that you don't always think matter can add up into big, big benefits. I've been getting a lot of questions consistently all year long throughout 2010 about testing for my clients, and as Adam mentioned, it seems to be hitting a tipping point in interest from clients and users. So it's wonderful to be here today with Adobe and OpenTable, sharing information about what I think is a really important and crucial topic. We're going to cover three main things this morning in my presentation. First, we're going to discuss the tremendous potential of online testing and how companies are putting online testing to work in a variety of ways, and we'll talk about some experiences and best practices there. We'll also talk about the challenges that are encountered by users and how to overcome them. And then finally, I have four critical factors to consider when you're launching an online testing program and getting ready to start looking at what vendors might be able to help you with that task. So why is online testing so hot? Why is it top of mind right now? First, the pervasive web. The web is ever present in the customer experience, and even if you consider your own personal interactions or your business interactions with the companies you do business with, it's clear that our experiences weave their way through the web pretty consistently these days. This has really made measuring and understanding the implications of the web for customers to be critical for organizations. Next, marketers' intuition doesn't work in interactive marketing. It's too hard to guess now, and it's too risky to guess. We have too many anonymous visitors with unclear intentions that come to our websites today, and frankly, the only way to know for sure what's going to resonate with them is quantitative testing. We find that online testing can drive innovation, particularly in a lean environment that most of us are working in today as we start to see light at the end of the tunnel of the recession. Online testing provides a framework for testing ideas and creatives and promotions and even technical decisions in a quantitative, low-risk environment so we can maintain innovation and keep up with customer demands. This technology is definitely designed to make us successful in optimizing the user experience. And most of all, the proof is in the pudding. Online testing is effective. Users of online testing regularly report time and time again that testing delivers results against the goals that they set out for their testing programs. And that is, honestly, I think, the best argument of all. To get on the same page, let's talk about defining online testing. Online testing is a methodology that allows site owners to test the impact of specific website components on target metrics. Typically, at least the way we define it at Forrester, this takes two forms, the first being A/B testing, which is where you test multiple variations of an element against one another. So a very, very simplistic example might be you have a red button and a blue button, and you test random variations of that. Some people get the red button on the site, some people get the blue button, and you compare the results later on. The more advanced flavor of online testing is called multivariate testing, and this technique allows you to test multiple variations of multiple site elements against one another simultaneously. This is very powerful, allows you to be much more efficient with your testing and also understand how other elements affect one another. Online testing is a part of a bigger world. Online testing is a component of the overall site optimization toolkit, as Forrester defines it. And that overall toolkit applies statistical techniques to tailor the online experiences of visitors and segments. And that encompasses testing, as we're discussing today, but also recommendations technologies and behavioral targeting. Online testing really is the workhorse of site optimization. It's the starting point where most organizations start with when they embark on their site optimization journey, and online testing is very, very scalable in terms of sophistication, volume, and cadence. And this really makes online testing a compelling starting place for your testing program. How do people use it? What makes online testing useful? First, most people use it to measure against website goals, things such as conversion, which is the most classic application. So you're testing permutations of content or promotions and evaluating them against the performance of your website, against certain goals, such as how many people buy, how many click-throughs there might be. Many people use it to improve customer experience. So how can online testing enhance your website and tie to corporate objectives? Actually, this is something that Julie gets into later on in her presentation on how OpenTable uses site and corporate goals as well. Driving incremental improvements. You don't have to boil the ocean with online testing, which is fantastic. You can test small things incrementally and make small improvements over time to understand how they add up to make big differences. The only caveat to this that I will tell you is that your ability to run tests and the speed of tests does depend on your site traffic. You need to have enough traffic to gain a statistical level of significance. So if you have a site with relatively small traffic, of course you can still use and benefit from testing, but occasionally your test may take just slightly longer. Testing gives us statistically based insight into what works and what doesn't. It really helps us understand what makes the website tick and what visitors want. It gives us an understanding of what's important on our website, how do factors on our website interact with one another, because they're not operating independently. Your website is a conglomeration of multiple elements working together. And you can also use segmentation within testing to understand how factors and interactions affect different segments of your visitors. We've done research on this at Forrester, and when we ask users of online testing techniques what are the top 3 benefits your companies realize through testing, we see that conversion is king, particularly for transaction-oriented websites. Non-transactional sites look at slightly different elements because they're not necessarily selling something on the site. Many of these sites will be looking at different elements that drive engagement, downstream or offline conversions. So a lot of those sites often look at form completion and registration. But as you can see, no matter what kind of website you have, you can use testing to apply and measure against certain goals that are relevant to the kind of site archetype that you have. Next, let's talk about obstacles. Online testing is definitely a challenging endeavor. Online testing sounds great. We can improve our website, our customer experience, and it's appealing for so many reasons. And so many people report great success with it. But let's take a balanced view and let's understand some of the obstacles that users commonly encounter, and then we're going to talk about how to overcome them. Successful online testing certainly is more than just randomly swapping images on your website. It's about the process and the skills and resources that define your online testing program, as well as the technology. Many people come to me and they want to talk about the technology, but I try to make sure they understand that a rounded online testing program involves much more than just technology. And online testing programs, tools, are powerful tools, but they do require your attention. They're not necessarily automated. They're not lights-out artificial intelligence machines. They do need your oversight, some technical support, your creativity, as well as analysis. And they're powerful and useful tools, but they do require attention. So if you'll remember back to our workhorse, that's a great mode of transportation in certain situations. But a successful, ongoing online testing program does require a fully formed program. And the workhorse is only going to take you so far. Since this is a long-term commitment and it has great potential rewards for organizations, we want to strive to build this Formula One car of online testing capabilities. Let's talk about the components of an online testing program. There's 4 elements. Each element is crucial and potentially difficult. If the online testing program surrounding the technology is critical, what are those components? First, culture, which is a massive determinant of your organization's readiness for online testing and its ability to exploit the power of testing. Your culture needs to support an iterative approach and must tolerate failure. Not all experiments are going to meet the hypothesis that you set out. That's the reason you did the experiment in the first place. So it's important to have a culture that supports not a pure pass-fail exercise view, but an ongoing learning view of a testing program. Process. And as I mentioned earlier, it's about more than just swapping out images. There's a big process that wraps around online testing. You have to plan your tests, design them, and use creative elements. You have to execute a test and analyze the results, validate those results, and then repeat, since it's not a one-time exercise. You need marketing input, you need technical input, and you need to define program goals that are relevant to your business. Process is critical because running a live test is only that one piece of the puzzle. It takes cooperation from marketing and IT and an understanding of your goals. Resources. Testing takes people and skills. It also includes program management and ownership. And you or the supporting internal or external resources need the skills to manage, operate, and analyze those results. And finally, there is a technology piece to the solution. To run tests, you need to be able to work with your website team to set up experiments and tag your website. You also need analysis resources to evaluate test results. When we asked customers and users of online testing technology at Forrester earlier this year about what were their top challenges for online testing, we saw actually a remarkable amount of consistency in what they encounter. So we feel this is an important area to continue doing research. But what's really interesting is that so many of the challenges reported by users revolve around the program, not technical issues. If you look at the very bottom, I have a line next to the other please specify group. Over half of these that were cited were actually related to working with resources in-house, such as IT site dev, which is an organizational correlate actually to that number 1 issue of modifying web pages. These are all process issues, process and culture issues. It's also really interesting to note here, and I think quite encouraging, that ROI is the lowest ranked issue. And that tells me that once you get a testing program up and running, they're delivering on their promise for return on investment, if that's not a problem, which is great news. So how are we going to overcome these obstacles? Well, first, fortunately, we've talked through them today, and I hope that you'll take that to heart, and so now you'll see them coming from a mile away, and you won't be blindsided. But beyond that, it's really about the process. First, when you're starting out your program, make the business case for testing, especially if this is new. Particularly in large organizations, the business case really is critical for getting that resource and that buy-in from your organization. You can build a business case using data from third parties such as Forrester or vendors. We also recommend running a pilot program to establish your own benchmark and gain a level of comfort with online testing. And remember to incorporate all the components of your program, not just the cost of a tool, when your business case needs to include the people, that ramp-up time, any other cost that contributes to the program. Next, start with the basics. Establish the program, the processes, start to really understand your site. Success will breed demand in your organization over time, and coupled with that expertise you develop over time, you can use to expand the program. It's critically important to name somebody to own the online testing program. There has to be somebody in your organization who is responsible, even on a part-time basis, for looking over and managing that program. One of the huge failure points is organizations don't have anybody that owns the program, and people don't know where to go to, or nobody knows whose responsibility is to understand and manage all the elements that wrap around the technology. The ramp up and the resourcing is something that Julie also gets into with her open table presentation, so we'll hear about those later. Collaboration. Online testing involves a lot of people in your organization. It's a marketing exercise. It's also a technical exercise, so bring everybody into the fold from the very start. And finally, plan and plan and plan some more. Once the program ramps up and tests are running concurrently and there's a pipeline of testing, planning is of paramount importance. This also has a side benefit where if you're doing your planning and documenting everything that happens in your program, your schedules, your hypotheses, the goals, the metrics for your tests, you're really building up a knowledge base for your organization around what makes your website tick and your visitors and what tests work and which ones don't. This is a very powerful tool for ongoing site optimization. Next, let's talk about assessing the 4 critical factors before considering vendors. As with different organizations, different online testing programs have different needs. It is important to articulate the key needs of your program before looking for a testing vendor. This is going to help you make the right choice because it ensures that the vendor you select is chosen for the right reasons, the ability to support and complement your organization's abilities and skills. Like Formula One, online testing is a group effort. Formula One cars, like online testing, are in frequent need of outside help. They are very high maintenance. These cars need help maintaining their peak performance. The inherent complexity of online testing discipline and marketers' relative inexperience often drive a need for external support to launch and maintain online testing programs. According to our research at Forrester, more users leverage third-party services than don't. When selecting a vendor, users must consider their services requirements up front. Many vendors do offer a wide array of services, while others do emphasize a self-service approach, so it's important to know this going in. In a situation where testing is complex and resources are scarce, understand which services you're going to need. Recognize that need as early as possible so you can factor it into any kind of vendor selection you might do. Understand what services you're going to require as well as the services the vendor offers. Do you need help with implementation? Do you need training support? Do you need strategic consulting? Or are you planning actually to outsource and use managed services from your vendor to help you run substantial portions or even all of the program? Where are you going to need assistance? So consider, how much help do you need to support a robust online testing program? How much control do you need? Are you comfortable with using services from the outside? Do you want to become self-sufficient eventually? Many organizations use a lot of services while they ramp up and take advantage of knowledge transfer with the goal of being very self-sufficient one day. And what are the opportunity costs of services? So sometimes people get concerned about the cost of services, but really, if you've got that business case and you can say that testing delivers an ROI, then there might very well be a great argument for using more services up front or an ongoing basis to support a successful testing program because it still generates a return for the company. The second is usability. While online testing vendors do often talk about marketers as their target market, and certainly the marketing organization is a prime beneficiary of online testing, many customers have pointed out to Forrester that a lot of these applications are rather technical in nature. If you want usability to match the kinds of users, understand what kind of users you're going to have running the program on a day-to-day basis. And for example, don't put a regular commuter driver into a Formula One car. They won't know what the steering wheel means, and you're going to have performance problems. Understand exactly which users are going to be running the system on a day-to-day basis. Is it going to be your marketers or e-commerce staff? Is it going to be the web or analytics team? Or is it going to be a hybrid, a team effort where some people will be doing more technical aspects of use of the tool and some people will be taking advantage of information consumption? This is important to understand. So make sure to consider, depending on the needs of these different users, what kind of user experience do they need, especially in the case of less technical users, people from marketing. What does the user interface look like? Do they get guidance when they're doing work in the tool? For example, are there wizards or a guided process or workflow so that they can get their job done easily? How usable is it really? Also consider what elements of the tool do the different kinds of users need to access. Do people need access to all the reporting and analysis? How does the workflow and administration work? Can you have roles set up within the tool so certain people can only see reports and other people are allowed to set up and execute tests? That has security implications, but many people take advantage of roles as a way to encourage usability with their different kinds of users. Also think about information distribution. What other people who even aren't necessarily going to be using the testing tool on a day-to-day basis are going to need information from this tool? So can you extract reports or email reports or have information coming out of your online testing tool that can be distributed to other people in your organization? Third, Formula One racing is heavily dependent on integration with the outside world, just like online testing. During races, a team of people monitors track conditions, weather, the competitors, and data from the vehicle. This data is used to optimize performance and with directions to the car, or even with things like tire selection and when to do pit stops. Similarly, although online testing remains an emerging discipline for customer intelligence professionals, it does not live in a bubble. This is another tool in your marketing workbench. We talked about the site optimization toolkit earlier. This is one piece of that site optimization puzzle. Also, you've already made investments in infrastructure and other kinds of tools that support the rest of your marketing mix. So consider, how does online testing fit within your organization's existing marketing ecosystem and goals? And what are the integration points where interaction between the testing system and other tools that you have in-house makes sense? Forrester clients frequently refer to doing integrations with their existing web analytics tool, with web content management systems, or even with customer relationship management tools. Once you know the degree to which you want your online testing to interact with your marketing ecosystem and what those potential integration points are, you need to start talking about what are the technical options for exchanging information between these environments. And this is where you're going to want to talk to your vendors, potential vendors that you're speaking with and considering working with. How can they support this? Do they have packaged integrations with other tools already? Can you use scripting or application programming interfaces or manual batch files to exchange information? What are the requirements of the integration points that you want, and how can your vendor technically support that? Finally, some car buyers care very, very little about the aerodynamics of their vehicle or the details that make their car more or less efficient or performance. But in Formula One, teams expend significant resources to design cars with optimal performance. And as you can see in this detailed view of a front wing, these can be very, very small and nuanced elements that make a big difference on race day. Similarly, user options vary regarding the appropriate level of statistical rigor and control of online testing techniques. User organizations that I talk to have very diverse opinions about the level of analytical rigor that they want in their online testing tool. And this goes to the actual underlying algorithms that a tool uses to execute and analyze tests. All online testing tools use appropriate statistical techniques, and they can run your tests and provide great results. So you're probably going to be safe with just about anything you pick. But you want to make sure that you pick a tool that matches the needs of your specific organization, because there are some differences in those capabilities. Some organizations are perfectly happy with a black box that allows them to run tests without ever knowing what happens underneath the hood. Some organizations have a very different view. They might have econometricians with PhDs who want to understand every little detail of the multivariate techniques and randomization that their tools use. Neither of these approaches is right or wrong, or more or less or more wrong. It just matches up how they want to operate their online testing program. This is really driven by the skill sets in their organizations, how their businesses operate, and the cultural expectations for how statistical methodologies should be employed. So when you pick an online testing tool, you want the technical capabilities of that tool to be consistent with how your organization operates. Again, there's no right or wrong answer. You need to determine where your organization falls in terms of preferences for testing techniques. Especially when you get to multivariate testing, there can be many more differences than you would traditionally see in A/B type testing. Full factorial testing in multivariate means that you're testing every single permutation of a test that you've set up. For efficiency sake, Many vendors offer a partial factorial option, and even within that, there are some different flavors, such as a standard algorithm. You may hear the term Taguchi referred to, or a few others. And many vendors have done a lot of their own research and development to have hybrid algorithms that they believe to be more effective and more efficient. So when thinking about your testing needs, consider how does your company define robust analysis for the purpose of testing? Understand how much control do you want over the testing algorithms? Do you want to never have to think about the testing algorithm? Do you want to have a level of control in choosing which testing tool is used? What makes the most sense for you? And also, how does a vendor's testing algorithm match the kind of testing that you plan to perform? In summary, I have 3 final items for you to wrap this up. 1, consider online testing as a component of your site optimization mix and a part of a bigger program. Recognize and anticipate the obstacles that are come your way when you're ramping up and implementing and operating your program. With a business case and process and planning, you should be able to anticipate and overcome most of these obstacles. And finally, before you make an investment in any kind of technology, assess your program against the 4 factors to understand where you fall in those spectrums and what the exact needs of your program are to be successful before you spend money on a tool that may not be able to support those needs. I do have some follow-up reading suggestions for you. As Adam mentioned, just a few weeks ago, Forrester Research, I released a paper called The Forrester Wave Online Testing, Q3 2010, and we looked at 8 vendors, and we actually scanned them against over 82 criteria, talked to upwards of 100 users of the technology to assess where these different vendors fall in terms of their online testing capability. Adobe ranked as one of the 2 leaders in this evaluation, so they have a lot to be proud of. Test and Target exhibited strength in almost every dimension I evaluated. Their strategy, including their client references, were outstanding. Their campaign management capabilities, the usability, which I mentioned earlier, did very, very well, and their service and support capabilities, also one of the key assessment areas. Adobe is well suited to organizations that consider the online testing discipline to be a parallel practice to web analytics and require broad online marketing support. And this is because of, as Adam showed us earlier when he kicked off the call, that broad suite of tools that Adobe brings to bear in their online marketing suite. They also consider online testing to be a component of a larger site optimization and marketing capability. And with that, I thank you very much. And I'm going to turn it back over to Adam to move us on to Open Table. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you very much. That actually, I think, was an excellent and thorough overview of what any organization ought to be ready to consider when they're considering or they're contemplating making online testing an integral part of their marketing efforts. And I would say, as an individual focused on this environment, it is excellent to see Forrester dedicate this amount of rigor and research to helping organizations kind of get off the fence and realize the benefits that are available to them through a sustained and contemplative testing approach. So we certainly do appreciate that, and thank you for the distillation and the summary there. With that, I think we will shift gears now. We have Julie Hall has also joined us from Open Table, and she is prepared to walk us through how her company has overcome some of those very challenges that Joe called out, and what some of the benefits that they've derived from those efforts. It's always good to have someone who has their fingers on the pulse of their company and understands how a testing program is really dialing in and helping them meet their customers' needs. So, Julie, thank you very much for joining us, and we'll turn the time over to you now.
Great. Thanks for the time today, and thanks to Adobe for giving me the opportunity to share how far Open Table has come with testing. As Adam mentioned, my name is Julie Hall. I'm a product manager for the Open Table website, and I manage our web optimization and testing roadmap. So first, I'll talk a little bit about Open Table and then move into the reasons we decided to look into a more robust testing tool. I'll follow that with some of the results we've seen just using Test and Target, and then really finish off with just some practices that we found to be most helpful in our own success with testing. So just a little background about OpenTable. We have a network of about 14,000 plus restaurants worldwide who utilize our reservation management solution, offering us really the ability to provide our consumers with a website that displays reservation times in real time. Consumers can book reservations for free directly from our website or from restaurant websites that have some type of OpenTable integration. And then for all booked reservations through OpenTable.com, users who are registered with us will receive points that they can then use towards what we call dining checks, which are redeemable at any OpenTable restaurant. Our competition is really the phone, and the reason for that is that around 92% of dining reservations are still made via the phone. And that's the needle we're really trying to move in optimizing our website experience. It's also important for us to really be able to speak to and address the needs of two key consumer groups: users who know where they want to dine and users who aren't yet sure. And for those users who know where they'd like to dine, we want to create a streamlined experience that really removes any obstacles in the reservation path. But at the same time, for users who are browsing to find a restaurant, we want to provide quality and engaging content that will help them in making their dining decision. So as I mentioned, one of our main goals in testing is increasing the number of reservations that are made online through our site. Another key testing goal is increasing our customer retention, and that's gauged often through our registration rates. Registration isn't required for a user to make a reservation, but there are benefits to registering, and so really messaging those benefits appropriately and at the right time, in addition to making the process as easy as possible, are important goals for us that can really be measured effectively with the right testing tool. So on to some of the testing challenges that we've had. So before we actually signed on with Test and Target, we were using a homegrown testing solution. I'm sure many companies do this, that generally required a lot of engineering overhead and provided really clunky data reporting that was only available for us upon request. And so we were trying to get our feet wet with testing, but the inefficiency of our solution made it really challenging for us to create meaningful conclusions around our results. And we also had no clean way of slicing our data in ways that would have helped us make more targeted decisions. So we did a lot of vendor analysis before deciding to proceed with Test and Target, and we decided to move forward with them for several key reasons. As I mentioned before, increasing the number of reservations that are made on our site is a key success metric, but it really isn't our only success metric. The tool allows us to watch conversions per recipe or per variation across multiple success metrics, which is highly valuable for us in making decisions about whether to implement a variation or to continue the iteration process. The tool also provides us with the ability to slice our conversion data based on segments that are either out of the box or custom built. And all of our segments have been built through the tool itself, regardless of whether they were out of the box or custom built, avoiding any interference with our code behind, which is great. One of the most common ways we segment data is via geography, so that we can understand how our changes are affecting conversions within all of our different markets. What we can then do is make decisions on how configurable or specific our changes need to be in order for them to provide the most value. More and more, global changes really aren't the answer for us. The more targeted we can be when optimizing, the more value we can gain in the variations that we create. Okay, so let me talk a little bit about the results that we've seen through testing. Clean segmentation, as I discussed in the previous slide, has been hugely valuable for us in building the most targeted iterations on our tests. Our decisions on messaging, reservation, and registration pathing as well as just full-scale redesigns, had traditionally been based on hypotheses and best guesses. But through testing with a robust tool like Test and Target, we've been able to challenge assumptions and test hypotheses to determine the most successful optimizations. Because our site gets a good amount of traffic, we're also able to get a level of confidence in the results more quickly, which leads to more frequent iterations, which is great. We've been able to implement headlines and messages, as well as page flow changes and redesign pages, knowing with confidence, really, that those changes are making significant impacts on our business. One of the changes that we made was an update to the reservation flow in which we removed our login page from the step for a user who we already recognized as anonymous. We initially had that login page displayed for all users, but realized that we could potentially see an impact if we cut a step in the flow for an anonymous user, since we were already aware that an account was not created, and then offer those users an opportunity to register with us later on in the flow, again creating a targeted experience for a specific user type. We tested this flow through Test and Target and realized that our hypothesis was correct, which is great. We've also been able to prove that lift does not always come through massive scale changes. I think Joe mentioned this as well. Small changes that are placed on the right high-traffic pages can create high-impact changes as well. And we found through testing that testing small headline and messaging changes in key areas have also created a significant impact for us. So I'll summarize with some of the best practices that have helped us as a company make testing a standard business practice. We have a standing weekly testing and optimization meeting comprised of stakeholders from product, from marketing, from engineering, where we discuss the results of active tests and their next steps. We also review the roadmap that has been mapped out for the near and long term and talk through any additions or updates needing to occur based on changing business needs. The process has allowed us to solidify the justification for testing by including all those stakeholders and gives all interested team members the opportunity to review and provide feedback on a roadmap that's really designed to be flexible and to support change. Another thing I've learned is that most successful test designs have outlined next steps for all possible outcomes. A lot of times, the variation that you think should outperform your control does not. And when that happens, it shouldn't mean that you have a flawed test or that you did something wrong. It really just means that your assumptions have been challenged and that you should have a plan in place to address that result. It also helps to create small-scale tests that can be iterated on through stages. And to avoid building these complex tests that you think will answer all questions about a particular page or a particular page flow at one time. Because honestly, that usually doesn't happen, and instead the results end up being hard to interpret. So overall, trying to answer one question at a time, implementing that solution, and then moving to the next question has been the most effective methodology in test design for us. And Test and Target solution allows us to execute this way really effectively. And that's really the extent of what I wanted to cover today. Adam, if you have any other thoughts. Otherwise, thanks so much for your time, and I'm available at jhall@OpenTable for any comments or questions.
Thank you, Julie. Thank you very much. We'll make sure to share that email address with folks that have downloaded this webinar. I certainly feel that this was time well spent. Time that's been invested in this topic is certainly, I think, can pay huge dividends. And Julie, we appreciate you sharing those best practices and reasons for people to believe that once they've made this investment and considered Joe's advice on how to go into a testing effort with their eyes wide open, that they can have success, as demonstrated by your overview here and your company's efforts. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
I just wanted, before we sign off, wanted to provide a few last and key takeaways based on what we've learned. First, I think all of us as marketers, we're always wondering, what can we do more? What can we do better? And I think we've gotten some great advice on how making testing the foundation of your site optimization is an excellent first step. It's an excellent mechanism to adopt and to integrate throughout your online marketing programs. And then next, use testing to make data-driven decisions. It's amazing to me, as a marketer for a testing product, how often we speak to people that even sometimes who have testing programs in place still are inclined to leverage their gut and sort of their experience above the data that a strong testing program can provide them. It's interesting to see the evolution of the marketplace, and we certainly encourage people to let their users vote with their clicks. Put a testing program in place that allows users to demonstrate and show you what works best. And third, make sure you choose an online testing vendor wisely. I think you've got probably the best and most comprehensive overview available in the market today from Joe and Forrester to help you understand the things to consider and the elements that you want to make sure that are in place with a vendor who will become a partner of yours in making online testing a success for your company. And lastly, make sure to iterate to increase conversion results. Around here at Adobe, we like to talk about the way testing needs to be a program and not a project. It needs to be something that you start with the intention to iterate and continually look and challenge the status quo, continually be focused on how can we improve this experience to make it more relevant to our customers and better performing for our organization, because I can promise you, you will find ways and reasons to evolve and optimize your experience, and your customers will reward you with loyalty and increased business. And that's pretty much what we have for you today. We appreciate your time. We certainly appreciate the efforts and insights provided by our distinguished guests, Joe and Julie. Thank you very much. And with that, we'll sign off.